Hello everyone. Hello English lovers and book lovers and English readers. Welcome to this new live read along. Oh, it's very bright at the back. Oh, wow. Here. So welcome to this new live read along, and we're reading today chapter 13 of Little Women. This is our read of the month, our book, our graded reader book pick, and February pick of the month. And it's been 2 weeks we've started reading this book, and now we are at the end. So in the end, it's not really a whole month that we're reading the book, but almost. It's the concept with this live read with this live reading. Sorry, I can't express myself. So the concept is that throughout the whole month, we are reading an adaptation of a classic or contemporary novel, and usually I read the book over 3 weeks, and each day I read one chapter, so you can digest easily one chapter, and it allows us as well to take the time to reflect on that particular chapter, and also to oh my God, I just realized I was meant to respond to your lovely message, and I didn't get the time. I'm sorry. How are you, Ada? I'm sorry I didn't get the time, but I'm going to answer your message, your lovely, heartwarming message. It was so sweet. I will answer you for sure. If I've got time after this live, but I'll definitely answer your message. Oh, you're welcome. I'm good. I'm very well, thank you. And I'm happy to be doing this live today. I do it earlier today because it's Wednesday. So every day I do it at 6 o'clock, 6 CET, Central European Time, which is Paris time. And only on Wednesdays I do it at 2 p.m. It's good to see you. Yes, I'm so glad that you're able to be here today. It's so nice. Hello, Titouan. Welcome. So I'm so sorry. I have very little time. Oh, that's fine. Don't worry. Did you Oh yes, I see. I think that you read the book. Did you read the whole book, Ada? I think that you've read the whole book already. So yesterday we read chapter 12, and today we're going to read chapter 13. And tomorrow will be the last chapter. Yeah. So tell me, what did you think about the book now that you have read it? Yes. Tell me, what did you think about the story? Yesterday we read chapter 12. It was a very short chapter about, it was just after Beth recovered from the scarlet fever. So Beth is the third sister. So we're reading Little Women, and it's the story about those 4 sisters. And in chapter 11, we learn that Beth, the third sister, she is the one that is She loves playing the piano. She's very unselfish, and she loves to also yeah, she loves playing the piano, and she's a very good girl, and yeah, she's very nice to others. And she got the scarlet fever, and she was very sick. And yesterday we and her sisters, yeah, here you've got Meg and Joe, the two eldest sisters, who were very worried about her. And they asked their mom to come back because she was away to look after their dad, who was also sick at the same time. But in the end, he felt better, and the mom, Mrs. March, could come back to assist her, to be there for her daughter. And at the same time, Beth was feeling better. And chapter 12 was the following day, and it was about not much really happened in that chapter, but it was very much about the love story, sort of between Meg and Mr. Brooke. Mr. Brooke is Laurie's tutor or private teacher, and he's in love with her, but we don't really know if she is in love with him. So that was about this yesterday, and Joe knows about the fact that Mr. Brooke kept a glove of Meg. She noticed that with Laurie. I think it's actually Laurie who told her, and she suspects that Mr. Brooke is in love with her. And what we learn from Mrs. March is that Mr. Brooke also accompanied Mrs. March to visit Mr. March. I mean the sisters' dad, well, their dad, and he was very kind, and he actually revealed to the parents that he was in love with Meg, and that but for now, he didn't want to propose because he wanted to earn money before proposing. And he wanted to be worthy of her and have a stable income for her, to be able to propose to her. And he doesn't also, he's not sure about Meg's feelings, so it's a little bit tricky. So we don't know really what Meg thinks about Mr. Brooke. Sorry, it's very nice and warm book. I liked it very much. I like the author as well. I started to read another book of this author. It's Sense and Sensibility. I think you confuse Jane Austen. Here it's Louisa May Alcott. She is the author. And the author of Sense and Sensibility is Jane Austen. It's someone else. It's not the same person who wrote this one and Sense and Sensibility. They're both women, that's for sure, but the author of Sense and Sensibility is Jane Austen. It's fine, it's fine. But it's actually interesting that you're talking about this, because yeah, because we were actually saying that it's fine. we were actually discussing that it really feels that Louisa May, this author, it feels like she's been influenced by Jane Austen, because Louisa May Alcott is writing she was born in 1832, and she died, and by the time of her death, in 1888. So she's lived in the 19th century, but Jane Austen was an author from the 18th century. So she was she is not precursor, but she was an author before. So she from a century before, not really a whole century, because Jane Austen was I don't have her birth date, but she is an author from the late 18th century, so she's older than Louise. Yes, she's older. She's from an older generation of authors. I think she's from the late 18th century, or middle. Not sure. Anyway, but she was born before, and this is why we actually feel like Louisa has read. It feels like she has read it. She has read Jane Austen, because there is this chapter when I think it's about Meg as well, when she's wearing this dress. It's chapter 7. Yes, this one. It's chapter, Meg hears some gossip, and that's chapter 7. And at the end of this chapter, you have Mrs. March, so Meg didn't really like the people talking behind her back and gossiping about her love, and those lady who were doing the matchmakers, and wanting to wanting for her to get married with Laurie, who is a little bit younger, but more or less same age. Actually, Meg didn't like that, and when she told her mother actually said, "Oh, hello, Celine." Her mother actually said that she would rather her to marry someone, to be a poor man's wife, than being unhappy with someone that is rich and has rank. So it's something that it's very much Jane Austen, because it's in all her writing, all the time, in each novel that Jane Austen wrote, her aim was for her characters to marry for love, and not for the money and the status in society. So it really feels like I don't have the expression, but it feels like I really need to find that expression in English. It really feels like it's a reference to "Hello, Celine, how are you?" It really feels like it's a wink, like a little reference to Jane Austen. Really feels like it. Jane is an American writer, but I don't know about Louise. I will look it up on internet. There are very strange writers for me. I got to know you that oh, sorry, I got to know them thanks to you. As a woman, I like women's work. Oh, I'm so glad. I'm so glad that you didn't know about that. You just that thanks to my account and what I'm doing, you discovered Jane Austen. Oh my God, this is a treasure. I'm so glad that now you know about her. And that you know about more female authors. There's so many. So Jane Austen is a British writer. She's an English writer. And Louisa May Alcott, she is an American writer. So it's the opposite. Louise is American and Jane is English. And do I have... No, I don't have the other books with me. They're upstairs. But it's fine. Don't worry. It can happen. Sometimes we can get confused. I'm fine, thank you. And you? I'm very good. I'm happy that you have joined this live, Celine. Do you like reading, and do you like English literature? Tell me. I'm very ashamed of... It's fine. I mean, it's not easy to get into. We can get easily confused sometimes, especially when we are starting something new. Ada, I was actually wondering, did you learn English on your own? I think you told me that I can't remember. Did you learn English on your own? Because I have to say that if it's the case, then I'm very impressed that you're able to write to me and you're able to understand what I'm saying, and the books that we are reading. I learn English. My God, this is so brave of you, and it's so brave, yeah, in a way, but I would say it's very impressive. I'm very impressed that you're doing this on your own, and it's normal to not know those authors and everything, because this is something that even me, who I learned English at school at first, but unless you're doing English literature studies, you don't know, you can't... In schools, they don't really teach about literature. They never read English books or adaptations like that. You know, the first edition of these books, they date from... This edition is from 2008. So I was 18. So yeah, it was... But they started doing this in the 90s, and I was quite... So they existed when I was at school, but no teachers would read to us stories. Or I discovered Jane Austen on my own, because in 2005, the adaptation, the film adaptation of Pride and Prejudice came on screen, and I streamed that film, and I was, something that wasn't allowed, that was the illegal the beginning of streaming, video streamings. And it was kind of, you had to go on those websites, and it was illegal, and you didn't have the subtitles and all that. And I discovered the work of Jane Austen on my own. And because I didn't do English literature studies. I studied other stuff, history, and nothing related really with English literature. And I just educated myself, you see. So don't feel like you don't feel bad about confusing. We're all learning, and being able to and learning on your own, it's not easy, and it takes time as well, and yeah, and it's okay sometimes when we confuse. It's all right. I took very short course when I was at school. Oops, sorry. Now I'm trying to improve it. Yes, and it's not easy to practice your English, especially when you live in a country that people don't, it's not you know, you live in a country where English is not the the second language, or not many people speak English. So it's you have to find ways, and internet is amazing for that, because you get access to, you know, a lot of films and all that in English. I like reading, but I don't know English writers. Yeah, well, so Celine, at the moment we are reading Little Women. So we are finishing now. We just have 2 chapters left. So we are reading one today and another one tomorrow. And if you're interested, you can find this book on my Amazon reading list, graded readers list, and you will find a lot of graded readers. Those are in French is lecture facile. Those are adaptations of classics or contemporary novels, and they are adapted for English learners. So they're much smaller, and I don't have examples here, but they are much smaller than the real book, and you can really start reading. Oh, you're gonna go? I totally did not read books in English. I have recently started to read in English. It's a great feeling when you're able to read and understand English books. I did not read before. Yes, thank you. You encouraged me very much. Oh, see you, Adar. Bye bye. Yes, sorry. I was saying goodbye to Adar because I wanted to make sure that I had read her message. So Celine, yes. So we are reading this, and the author is Louisa May Alcott, and I like to read books that are written by female authors. So this is one of those books. So Little Women in French it's known as Les Quatre Filles du Docteur March. It's quite famous. I think that you probably heard before the name of this book. And in English, the real title is Little Women. And there has been a film, an adaptation into a film recently. I don't know if you saw that, but it was a great adaptation of this novel. So this is one of them. We were talking just before you joined the live. We were talking about Jane Austen. She's my favorite author. She wrote Pride and Prejudice, Orgueil et Préjugés in French, and there is also Sense and Sensibility. She wrote so many novels who have been adapted into films. You've got Emma. Recently, there's been a film adaptation. Another one, because there are loads of adaptations of her books, and it's very popular. It's very romantic. If you know Bridgerton, it's the kind of, so it's the same era, but the difference is that the author of Bridgerton is contemporary to our time. She's right. She's in 21st century. She's a 21st century writer. Jane Austen is a writer of her time. She's writing the novels about her time, so the 18th century. So it's a very different dynamic. But if you like Bridgerton, you will definitely love Jane Austen. So that's to give you a little bit of context about Jane Austen and her world. So these are two examples, but yeah, there are so many writers. And if you have a look in my Instagram account, I have different highlights in which I've done live readings of Frankenstein as well. It's a novel written by a female author as well, Mary Shelley. It's a Gothic story, so it's not really romance and stuff. So that's not really romance. That's more, there is a little bit of romance, but yeah. Frankenstein, it's more like a Gothic style. And then I did the reading of Sense and Sensibility from Jane Austen as well. So you can find those lives in my highlights as well. And you can find the books on my Amazon list as well. So yeah, if you have other questions, Celine, don't hesitate and pop the question. I'm going to start reading the chapter 13 now. After doing this long introduction and chatting about books and reading. Yeah, you're welcome. If you have other questions, please do. So, chapter 13. Laurie makes trouble and Joe makes peace. So, Laurie is the neighbor. He lives with his grandfather next door. His grandfather is very rich, and his parents have died. So he is staying with his grandfather, and he likes spending time with the March girls, and more specifically Joe. He really likes Joe, and they spend a lot of time together. So let's see. Make trouble. Laurie makes trouble. To make trouble means that he is doing something bad, or I don't know. I don't know what he's been doing, but naughty is naughty. Laurie quickly realized that Joe was keeping a secret, which she refused to tell him. But he guessed the secret was about Meg and Mr. Brooke, and was annoyed that his tutor had said nothing. He began to make some private plans of his own. Meg, meanwhile, was busy getting things ready for her father's return, but a change suddenly seemed to come over her. For a day or two, she jumped when she was spoken to, and there was a worried look on her face. Then a letter arrived for her, and a few minutes later, Mrs. March and Joe saw Meg staring at it with a frightened face. My child, what is it? Said Mrs. March. It's a mistake. I didn't send it. Joe, how could you do it? Meg hid her face in her hands and cried. Me? I've done nothing, said Joe. What's she talking about? Meg pulled another letter from her pocket and threw it to Joe. You wrote it, and that bad boy helped you. How could you be so cruel and mean to us both? Jo and her mother read the letter, which had been in Meg's pocket. My dearest Meg, I can no longer hide my love for you. Whoa. And must know your answer before I return. Ooh, okay, so maybe you can guess who's that from. I cannot tell your parents yet, but I think they will agree if they know that we love one another. Mr. Lawrence will help me find a good job, and then, my sweet girl, you will make me happy. Say nothing to your family yet, but send a word of hope to me through Laurie. Your loving John. That terrible boy, said Jo. I'll make him sorry. Okay, so it seems like Laurie talked to Mr. Brooke, or told Mr. Brooke to write a letter to Jo. I don't know. But her mother said, wait, Jo, are you sure this has nothing to do with you? I never saw the letter before, said Jo. But Mr. Brooke wouldn't write stupid things like that. Oh, it's like his writing, said Meg unhappily, looking at the second letter in her hand. Oh, Meg, you didn't answer it, said Mrs. March. Yes, I did, cried Meg, hiding her face again. Let me get that wicked boy, shouted Jo. Wicked means this mad, silly boy. Yeah. Wicked is this idea of being manipulative. What did you write to him? Asked Mrs. March. Wait, no. Shouted Jo. Let me get that wicked boy, shouted Jo. Mrs. March sat beside Meg. Tell me everything. Laurie brought the first letter, said Meg. He didn't seem to know anything about it. I was going to tell you, but I remembered how you liked Mr. Brooke and thought it would be all right to keep my little secret for a while. Now I can never look him in the face again. What did you write to him? Asked Mrs. March. I only said that I was too young to do anything and that I didn't wish to have secrets from you, so he must speak to father. I thanked him for his kindness and said I'll be his friend, but nothing more for a long time. Mrs. March smiled and looked pleased. Jo laughed. What did he reply to that? What did he reply to that? He writes here that he never sent any love letter and is sorry that my sister Jo should play games with us like this, said Meg. It's a very kind letter, but imagine how awful I feel. Whoa, I don't believe Brooke saw either of these letters, said Jo. Laurie wrote them both, and he's keeping yours because I won't tell him my secret. Go and fetch Laurie, Jo, said Mrs. March. I'll put a stop to all this at once. Away ran Jo, and Mrs. March gently told Meg Mrs. Brooke's real feelings. Now, dear, do you love him enough to wait until he can make a home for you? I'm frightened and worried, answered Meg. I don't want anything to do with love for a long time. Perhaps never. If John doesn't know about all this, don't tell him. Please make Jo and Laurie keep quiet. Mrs. March tried to calm her daughter, but as soon as Meg heard Laurie coming back with Joe, she ran out of the room. As inside, the voices rose and fell for half. The voices rose in terms of rising, being loud, and fell for half an hour. But the girls never knew what was said. When they were called in, Laurie apologized to Meg. Okay, so it's probably Joe. Yeah, it's probably the voices and fell for half an hour, but the girls never knew what was said. So I think that Joe is telling off Laurie. So she is being very mad at Laurie. Joe waited outside the room as inside. Oh, no. Joe waited outside the room as inside the voices rose and fell for half an hour. I don't know what's happening. But the girls never knew what was said. So Laurie, with Joe, she ran out of the room. Mrs. March saw the boy. Oh, sorry, it's Mrs. March. So I was gone. So Mrs. March is telling off the little boy. So Laurie. So he's being told off by Mrs. March. When they were called in, Laurie apologized to Meg and told her that Mr. Brooke knew nothing about either of those letters, of the letters. Please forgive me, Meg, he said. I'll try, said Meg, but I didn't think you could be so unkind. Laurie looked so sorry that Joe wanted to forgive him straight away. But she said nothing and refused even to look at him. When he went away, looking hurt and unhappy, Joe wished she had been more forgiving. She could never stay angry for long, so after a while she hurried over to the big house, taking with her as an excuse one of Mr. Lawrence's books that she had borrowed. Is Mr. Lawrence in? Joe asked a servant. Yes, miss, but you can't see him, said the servant. Why? Is he ill? said Joe. No, miss, but he's been arguing with Mr. Laurie. Where is Laurie? Said Joe. He's shut in his room and he won't come out. I'll go and see what's the matter, said Joe. I'm not afraid of either of them. She went upstairs and knocked on Laurie's door. Stop that, shouted Laurie. Joe immediately knocked again and the door flew open. She stepped inside before Laurie could stop her. I've come to say that I forgive you, she said, and I won't stay angry with you. Oh, said Laurie. Thank you. What's wrong? She said, seeing his unhappy face. I wouldn't tell grandfather why your mother wanted to see me because I promised her not to tell anyone, he said. But then grandfather tried to shake the truth out of me. So I came up here and shut myself. I expect he's sorry he did that, said Joe. Go down and say you're sorry. I'll help you. Okay, so here you can see, so this is why I really like those adaptations. It's that you've got some illustrations in these graded readers books. So you can see you've got here, so it helps understand the story. And here you've got Laurie, and that's his grandfather, and he's shaking him to get the truth and why Mrs. March wanted to talk to him. So he seems to be very angry here. So Joe, Go down and say you're sorry. I'll help you. No, I won't, said Laurie angrily. I was sorry about Meg, and I asked her to forgive me, but I won't do it again when I'm not the one who is wrong. He ought to believe me when I say I can't tell him something. I don't like being shaken like that, and I won't go down until he apologizes. Seems to be very stubborn. Stubborn means that, when you don't want to change your mind. Stubborn. Listen, if I get your father to apologize for shaking you, will you go down? Said Joe. Yes, but you won't do it, answered Laurie. If I can manage the young one, then I can. Okay, so that's Joe now. I was lost. If I can manage the young one, then I can manage the old one, Joe said to herself as she went downstairs. Come in, said Mr. Lawrence when she knocked on his door. It's me, sir, said Joe. I'm returning a book. Look how sneaky she is. Do you want any more? Said the old man, looking annoyed but trying not to show it. Yes, please, said Joe, and she pretended to look for another book while Mr. Lawrence stared at her crossly. What's that boy been doing? He asked suddenly. He won't tell me. He did do something wrong, and we forgave him, said Joe. But we all promised not to say a word to anyone. He must not hide behind a promise from you soft-hearted girls, said the old man. Tell me, Joe. I can't, sir, because mother has ordered me not to, said Joe. And if I tell you, it will make trouble for someone else. Not Laurie. These seemed to calm the old man. Then I'll forgive him, he said after a moment. He's a difficult boy and hard to manage, you know. So am I, said Joe, but a kind word always helps. You think I'm not kind to him? He said sharply. Too kind? Too kind, very often, said Joe, a little afraid, but just a bit quick to be angry with him sometimes. The old man looked a little ashamed. You're right, I am. Although I love the boy, I find it hard to be patient with him sometimes. Bring him down and tell him it's all right. I'm sorry I shook him. Why not write him an apology, sir? Said Joe. He says he won't come down until he's got one. Mr. Lawrence gave her another sharp look, but then smiled and put on his glasses. Here, give me a bit of paper, he said. The words were written, and Joe kissed the old man's cheek. Cheek, here. Then she went upstairs and put the letter under Laurie's door. But he came out before she was gone. Well done, Joe, he said. Did he shout at you? No, he was quite calm, said Joe. Now go and eat your dinner. You'll both feel better after it. Everyone thought the matter was ended, but although others forgot it, Meg remembered. She never talked about Laurie's tutor, but she thought of him often and dreamed her dreams. And once, when Jo was looking for something in her sister's desk, she found a bit of paper with Mrs. John Brooke written on it, over and over again. Oh dear, said Joe. Ooh, that's the end of chapter 13. And tomorrow, Happier Days is the title of the last chapter, chapter 14. So this, I spoiled myself a little bit. So yeah, so that's gonna be the last chapter tomorrow. The live tomorrow will be at 6 p.m. So I hope you will be able to join. So tell me, Celine, what did you think about this chapter? What did you like it, or do you understand a little bit this? Did you know about do you know the story Little Women? Or is it something that it's very new to you? Or did you know a little bit about it? Tell me. Yeah, so that chapter is quite, I have to say that tell me what you think about what Laurie did. Because I feel like it's not very nice what he did, and why did he do that in the end? No, I don't know. Okay, so I'm glad that now you know a little bit about this story, or at least that you've now you know a bit more what it's about. So it's, I feel like, yes, what Laurie did is really, we don't really understand why he did that, because in the end, Mr. Brooke, I mean Meg, feels very embarrassed and ashamed and feel very confused, you know, very embarrassed. And Mr. Brooke as well in the end. So these two are feeling very embarrassed in the end about the situation. And Laurie, it feels a little bit like Laurie played with those two people's feelings. So it's not, what did you think about what Laurie did? Do you think that, Celine, did you understand the story, or what happened, or was it a little bit difficult for you? Did you understand what happened in the chapter? Yeah, because it's, I personally, I don't really like the fact that Laurie took the initiative to write the letter to Meg, just to not test, but just to know, yes, or to be, yeah, I find it very sneaky and it's on, yeah, and being intrusive as well. Yes, a little. Okay. So I'm going to explain. So what happened is, so the story is about four sisters. You've got Meg, the eldest. So she's 15. She's 16 at the beginning of the story, and she turns 17 towards the end. So in this chapter, she's 17 years old. And so that's Meg, 17 years old. Then you've got Joe, 16. And then you've got Beth. She is 14. and then Amy, the last sister, who is 11, 12. So here in this chapter, we learn about, so Laurie is the neighbor, is a boy that lives next door with his grandfather, Mr. Lawrence. So Laurie is his grandson, and he is friends with all the March sisters, and he knows Meg, and he knows a little bit about, and Mr. Brooke is his tutor. He's Laurie's tutor, so his teacher, private teacher, and he's young as well, perhaps a little bit older than Meg, and he likes her very much. And Laurie knows that Mr. Brooke likes Meg, and to know what Meg thinks about Mr. Brooke, he writes a letter to Meg, but signing it as Mr. Brooke. So he pretends in the letter that he is Mr. Brooke. So in the letter, he says, "Oh, dearest Meg, I love you, and I will, and I would like to I cannot, tell your parents, blah blah blah." So he's revealing that he's in love with her, basically. And Meg answer the letter, reply to this letter, thinking that it's John, because it says, "You're loving John," and Mr. Brooke is called John. So she replies to the letter, but she says that she prefers to stay friends with him. And after that, John gets the letter. He gets the letter because she sends it to John, and John is confused. He doesn't understand why she sent her this letter, because he didn't send her a letter. And I don't know where it says, he didn't seem to know anything. He didn't seem to know anything about it. I was going to, but I remember how you look. Yeah. So he's confused. And then Meg received a second letter. And this only that it was too young to do, and that didn't wish. What did he reply to that? He writes here that he never sent a letter of any love. So that was about the first letter. And then the second letter was, what was the second? The first letter, he didn't seem to know anything about it. And then, I don't know, there is a second letter, and we don't really know about the second letter, what the second letter says. But again, it's not from John, but from Laurie. So she realizes, so Joe realizes that it's Laurie who wrote the letter. But Mr. Brooke wouldn't write stupid things. Yeah, I never saw the letter before, said Joe, but Mr. Brooke wouldn't write stupid things like that. It's like his writing, said Mrs. Unhappily, looking at the second letter in her hand. So, oh, so probably the second letter is the answer to, yeah, is John's answer. And Laurie brought the first letter. He didn't seem to know anything about it. I was going to tell you, but I remember. But I remember how you liked it. What did you write to him? I only said I was too young to do anything and that I didn't wish to have secrets from you. So he must speak to father. Yeah. What did he reply to that? He writes here. Oh, that's actually the second letter. Sorry, I was gone. So the first letter is he's revealing his love to her. And then she replies that, oh, you need to talk to my parents. I just want to be friends. And then she gets the second letter. And the second letter says that he actually doesn't know what is she talking about. That he never wrote any love letter, and he's sorry that his sister Jo should play. And actually, John, Mr. Brooke, thinks that it's Jo who is playing games with these two. It's a very kind letter, but I imagine how awful. But imagine how awful I feel. So so the first letter is from Laurie, but the second is from John himself, the real John, and he believes that it's Jo who wrote, who did this fake, who wrote the first letter, and but Jo definitely didn't. So she straight away went to fetch Laurie. And Laurie is being told off. So Mrs. March asks to see Laurie. And she's telling, so to tell off means that she tells him that she's shouting at him a little bit that it's not right what he did, it's not good, blah blah blah, you shouldn't do that, or I don't know what she says, but she is telling him off, sorry, and his father is angry because he wants to know why Mrs. March wants to talk to him, and Laurie doesn't want to say anything because Mrs. March said, okay, it stays between us and don't tell anyone. But his grandfather wants to know. And Jo arrives and she's trying to say, and Jo says to his grandfather, okay, he can't tell you, I can't tell you what it's about, and you just have to deal with that. It's just how it is. And then they go, then Laurie comes down and he has dinner with his grandfather. And at the end, it's quite a little insight. So everything seems to be all right, and everything seems to be sorted, all fine. But in the end, here at the end, it says when Jo was looking for something in her sister's desk. So Jo, I don't know, maybe the next day or a couple days later, she was looking in Meg's desk, and she found papers in which was written Mrs. Brooks, and in which Meg wrote Mrs. John Brooke many times, Mrs. John Brooke. You know, it feels like she tried to write her signature. You know, when you're young and you try different signature and you want to be like an adult and you want to try signatures. Well, she did the same by writing as if she was Mrs. John Brooke. Because in the 19th century, when a woman would get married, she would take her husband's name. So she wouldn't be anymore Mrs. Meg March. She would be Mrs. John Brooke. So she writes Mrs. John Brooke on the paper. That means that she would like to be his wife. So that's it. I hope that it's clear. Céline, tell me if that was helpful to you. I hope that I was clear. Sorry, I had to be focused in go back to the text to find some information. At some point I was a bit confused myself. So I hope it was helpful to you, and I hope to see you tomorrow. I will be reading chapter 14, the last one, and that will be the last live read along for now. Oh, yes, see you tomorrow for the new chapter. Yes, great. Was it okay for you? It was, did you understand when I re-explained the story? I mean, the chapter, was it clear? So I hope that, yeah. So tomorrow will be the last chapter, and next month, so in 2 weeks, we will start another live reading of a new book. It will be a new live read along. So I don't know if you got the question, but I hope I think I'm available tomorrow. Okay, that's fine. I hope that you that you understood the chapter after I re-explained, and I will be happy to have you tomorrow. And I have a beautiful end of rest of the day. It's not the end of the day. Have a beautiful afternoon, Céline, and see you maybe tomorrow. Bye bye.